And Lynn is a volunteer and board member with the Fire Safe Council of Santa Cruz County. For the past 4 years, she's been a FireWise coach for communities throughout Santa Cruz County, in addition to being a FireWise leader of her own community here in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Lynn co-founded the Fire Safe Council's Home Ignition Zone program with Mike Finn, who I see his name on the line, and Matt Abernathy. And Lynn's an active home ignition zone assessor. So with that, take it away, Lynn.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you. And hello, Bonny Doon. I'm probably the only person in the room that's not from Bonny Doon. I live up on Bear Creek Road and Skyline area. And if I were to move, I would move to Bonny Doon because you have just a great community. So I'm just going to show some slides to explain to you what the FireWise process is all about and why you might be interested in it if you're not already in a FireWise community. And I noticed that 3 of you are FireWise leaders. We've got Susan Mason from Pine Ridge Plus, Lizanne Jensen from Westdale, and Mike Finn from Sunlit Lane. So 3 of you represented already. So here, let me try to share my screen if we can get the technology to work. Okay, this is all about FireWise. So what the heck is FireWise? For those of you who don't know, so FireWise is a national program that's hosted by the NFPA, or the National Fire Protection Association. Across our country, we have more than 2,500 FireWise recognized sites. California's got more than 900. And the whole goal of the program is to keep people and homes safer from wildfire. What local nonprofit fire safety councils do is they provide the education to help promote local communities to become FireWise recognized. So that's what the Fire Safe Council of Santa Cruz County does. We have a program to do that. Across the county right now, as of the end of last month, we had 73 FireWise recognized communities. So we initially started with 9 about 4 years ago. And then after the 2020 CZU Lightning Complex fire, we saw a huge uptick, and we had a lot of FireWise recognized communities after that. And then recently, because of the environment of home insurance non-renewals, we've seen another big wave of communities interested in doing FireWise recognition. And that's mainly because of the discount that's offered by the FAIR plan if you're a resident in a FireWise recognized community. So in Bonny Doon, you've just got a great story. You're probably one of the most active community areas for doing FireWise communities. So in Bonny Doon itself, you have 11 FireWise recognized communities, and that's Comstock, Conifer, Sunlit Lane, Westdale, Country Estates, Bird Streets, McGiver Nights, Pine Ridge Plus, Bonny Wood, Bonny Mead, and Laguna Creek. And then we've got 2 in progress, which is the Upper Pine Flat Road area, and at Sky Ranch, which is sort of above where Sunlit Lane is near the airport. And then a new interest in Atherley Lane, which is adjacent to Upper Pine Flat Road. So it's just really exciting to see all of this happen. So keep on going. What we like to do at the end of each year is collect stats from all of our FireWise communities. So we have more of a voice with our board of supervisors and our local politicians and fire chiefs. So just to show that the power of private citizens getting together to do their own work. And so last year, at the end of the year, we had 55 communities covering roughly 4,500 homes. And together, those residents spent $11.2 million of their own money doing things to make their homes and their communities safer by like replacing a roof, hiring an arborist, replacing old wooden fences, that sort of thing. And then 112,000 volunteer hours. It's doing chipping, weed whacking, a whole host of other things around their homes and in their communities to make it safer from wildfire. So we like to encourage bragging rights. We like our FireWise communities to tell us everything they've done because it gives us a bigger voice with local politicians and with the community as a whole. So what is FireWise? So FireWise is a 6-step process. It's all voluntary. You form a community of 8 or more homes with adjacent parcels. The main focus is on neighborhood collaboration and then more of a deeper education for homeowners on home hardening and defensible space. Then in addition to that, things like emergency preparedness, evacuation readiness. You decrease risk for residents and your first responders. And you could have do a 5-star job in home hardening your own home, but if your neighbor doesn't do the same thing, you're still at risk. So, together we're better when we work together as a community. These are some people from my own community. We do a lot of road work parties, and it's this whole idea of working shoulder to shoulder with your community members. You create better bonds. You learn to know them a lot better. And then when you have emergencies, like that it snows and all the trees come down, and you need chainsaw help, you got your neighbors there. So that's one thing I love about this whole process. Why would you want to do this Firewise thing? These are the common reasons why there's Firewise is done in communities. The first one is just in general, reducing wildfire risk. That's kind of obvious. By doing vegetation management along your evacuation routes, around your homes, and then also evacuation readiness, ensuring that everybody has a go bag packed, or they have a list, that they would use for their go bag for emergency evacuation, and then establishing an emergency communications protocol within their communities. I know that Bonny Doon's kind of like a leader in using MERS radios as emergency communications, and that you guys are an example to the rest of the county. A lot of the rest of the county's Firewise communities look to Bonny Doon to learn more about using MERS radios. The second reason why a lot of communities are interested is the home insurance thing. So there's potential discounts from USAA, State Farm, and the Fair Plan if you are a resident in a Firewise recognized community. The USAA and State Farm provide maybe 2 to 5%, and the Fair Plan offers a 10% discount, which is better than a poke in the eye, because the Fair Plan is expensive. You also have the power of scale. As you get adjacent communities to do Firewise to reduce the vegetation load in the area, you're reducing wildfire risk for a whole, like the whole area. You kind of create this fire shed that I think Lizanne Jensen likes to call it. So that's kind of the power of scaling, as more community members and more adjacent community members become Firewise. And it's also that community collaboration, just teamwork together. And it provides that infrastructure that you could use not only for wildfire, but for, it snows, or we have bad earthquake, or your winter storms, which we all have in the mountains here. So what does it take to do Firewise? There's 6 steps to it. I'll just quickly run through it. And if you're interested, you can always contact me afterwards, and I'm happy to fill your ears with lots of Firewise stuff. So the 6 steps are: you form a steering committee, you do a wildfire risk assessment, which is a 14-page PDF document. You do 1 education event a year, you develop a 3-year plan, and then you report on the hours and dollars that you've invested in your community to reduce wildfire risk. It's a ridiculously low bar for people like you who live in the mountains. It's 1 hour per resident per year. You probably do that, in your sleep in a week, just weed whacking and clearing, vegetation around your property. And then the last step is to, your steering committee creates a portal on the Firewise, an account in the Firewise portal, uploads all the data, and hits the big submit button. All these details are on our on the Fire Safe Council's website. We also try to offer a lot of systems for support to connect our local Firewise leaders so that you can share best practices. So we have a South Bay Firewise Partners email forum where we share educational opportunities, best practices, common questions. We try to set up mentoring between experienced Firewise leaders and new Firewise leaders, just to get people through the process, and then just trying to host local connections with gatherings with local Firewise leaders, and then tools for like newsletter templates, surveys, example documentation. We try to encourage road work parties. And so this is my own community. I live on Sunset Ridge Road, and it's a private road, and we just get out there and we do road work parties a couple times a year with chippers and excavators and things like that. But I wanted to draw your attention to the photo on the lower right, which is what we want our roads to look like: cleared 10 feet either side, low stuff cut really low, and trees limbed up. And on our particular road, because it's 1 way in, 1 way out, we feel a little bit safer about being able to evacuate, in a wildfire. Finally, here is a picture of the Firewise sign that you get. So once you go through the 6 steps, submit your application. It usually takes 2 to 6 weeks for your application to be approved, assuming you did everything right. Once it is approved, immediately once you're approved, then online there's a digital certificate that says you're a Firewise recognized community that can be shared with all your residents. And that's the proof that's given to an insurance company to say, I'm in a Firewise recognized community. A couple of months later, you finally get some of these signs, these Firewise recognized signs, but it's a good way to let your local and out of town fire professionals know that you've gone the extra yard to make your neighborhood safer for them to come defend. So that's kind of a wrap up of what Firewise is. There's some resources here. I'll share my slides with Eric to make available for anybody who's interested. You can always contact me, look at our website. Fire Safe Marin is also just a really awesome website for information about Firewise and home hardening and evacuation preparedness. Then I wanted to, I lost track of time. Do we have time to ask Susan if she wants to say anything about her Firewise community?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Susan, do
Yeah.
you feel like sharing?
Yeah, thank you, Lynn. Lynn was very helpful setting it up. I would say the initial putting together the plan for a neighborhood is a bit time consuming. But once you get that initial done, and get everything, all your ducks in a row, and get recognized as a Firewise community, the renewal process is quite a bit easier. And I'm having people ask for the certificate now that they are getting fair plan and needing a discount, and very happy to be able to provide that. I think it kind of gets people thinking more about, we've had some pretty big investments in hardscaping, structure improvements, windows, hardy board, hardscaping around homes. So there's a lot going on. And then there's people, it is kind of voluntary. So there are those neighbors that don't do anything. But if you're planning to do it, I would encourage you to have a chat with Lynn and see if you can put it together. It's a valuable program.
Thank you, Susan. All right. Okay, I will turn the mic back over to, I guess Susan's going to be next, but thank you very much. And if you're interested in Firewise, my contact information, I'll put it in the chat as well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Lynn. That was very interesting and good transition. We have Susan on the screen. Susan Mason is currently the board secretary of Bonny Doon Fire Safe Council. She also spent, as most of you or many of you would know, she spent years volunteering with the Bonny Doon Fire and Rescue, where she served as captain. During that time, she was presented the Santa Cruz County Fire Department's Volunteer Firefighter of the Year Award by the Santa Cruz County Board of Supervisors. And she's going to tell us about the home ignition zone audits.
Okay, am I on?
Yep, you're on.
Okay. Yeah, looking for something to do after I basically got fed up with the fire department, and I came across the Fire Safe Council. The home ignition zone inspections are, let me get my slides up here.
You should see a share button at the bottom of your.
I have to tell it what to share. Okay, slideshow. There we go. It's a program that was put together by NFPA There's the website for it. And it's a voluntary program. The Fire Safe Council was able to train several evaluators, put us through a 2-day class. And then recently CAL FIRE had a 2-day class. So most of us have had about 4 days of going through how we do these. And why you might ask, would you want to do such a thing? Okay, next, whoops.
I think there's a little arrow on the bottom.
Yeah, I'm
left.
looking for the little arrow.
It's on the bottom left of your slide, all the way to, it's like barely visible.
Okay, let's see here. Next, okay. So why would you want somebody to come out? The insurance companies, I think, are using a lot of satellite views of homes. And how on earth can you tell what's going on the ground with that? People go out and say, okay, I need to get fire safe. And they get presented with a diagram like this. Any of your properties look like this? Mine doesn't. It's kind of hard to translate this into something that actually works on your own property. The value of having somebody come out and actually go around your property, well, there's several values. One, they can actually tailor it to what's going on with your individual piece of property. They can see where the vegetation is, what kind of house, what kind of construction materials, what kind of hazards. They can also be given some practical suggestions. Not everybody can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it comes down to figuring out what's the most effective thing that can be done with the funds and the time available. So an evaluator can help you with that. I think everybody knows that the 5 feet around the house is the most important. And then going out about 30 feet and then out to 100 feet if your property line isn't closer to you than that. The reason for these zones is the forensic studies that NFPA has done has shown that for the most part, homes catch on fire because not because of a solid wall of flame, but because of embers blown in that find opportunities to catch stuff on fire that's near the house and then transmit the fire into the dwelling. So knowing that you're dealing with embercast, then it helps try to figure out what are some good mitigations to do to where the house might be much more likely to come up smiling after an event. So what we look at when we come out, and one of the trainers, it was kind of funny, one of the trainers, he says, I can sum up the whole class in 2 words, yard work. So basically we come and look at the entire house from the top to the bottom and try to figure out how to protect it from embers and from excess heat. So it's important to check the roofs for any debris, make sure that the gutters are clean. They do have nice covers for gutters that make it a little easier to get up and either sweep them off or blow them off. If you shouldn't be on a roof, hire somebody to do that, please. Replace or repair any loose or missing shingles or tiles. Make sure the roof is intact and in good repair, and that it's a Class A roof. That probably would be one of the first things you would do if you needed to do some repairs to your house. The vents, there's vents often in the eaves. There's vents up by the roof, and there's vents that go into the underneath the crawl space of the house. 1/8 inch is what's recommended to be less friendly to embers. A lot of homes have 1/4 inch. So I think unless you've done something to your house recently, you may find that they're 1/4. There's also these little round vents that are a bit of a problem. And that can be a little more time consuming if there's a whole bunch of them to get that down to 1/8 inch. There's also attic vents, and there's actually they make some that close automatically. You might want to consider that if you have an attic. Loose window screens, broken windows. If you're feeling really flush, make sure that if you're replacing any windows, you get the good triple pane or tempered windows, because those will hold up to radiant heat better. Decks, underneath decks, it's good to keep stuff from blowing under there. So having some sort of screening around them and having plants kept away from decks is very helpful. And don't store anything under there unless you have it completely closed off, made into like a storage room. But you don't want any embers getting under there. I watched a couple decks catch houses on fire. Not pretty. And then move any flammable material away from wall exteriors. Stuff blows up against their mulch. Plants that get woody inside. Anything that can burn. Construction material. I think one of the things that I see a lot when I'm doing inspections is we all have that odd leftover construction material, stuff we use for gardening, odds and ends, and it gets stacked against the side of the garage or the side of the house. Not good. Tree spacing. We all, I don't recommend taking down all the trees. I'm kind of sad that got done at my house because it just makes more weeds grow. And some of the weeds are not pretty ones. The thing with trees is to kind of make sure there's separation between the canopies, give a good distance from the house. And underneath trees, it's important to not have fire ladders. If you've got a whole bunch of vegetation and, chaparral and all this stuff, and then you've got a tree, that's just a nice avenue to get the fire up into the tree and spread it around. So some suggestions can be given during an audit on how to clear up the yard. So this is places that embers can get trapped. When we go out and look at a house, we're looking at first from the roof on down, looking at the construction, looking at the siding, types of windows, what kind of venting and so forth. What are the areas of vulnerability? And then we're looking at things like you see here. Whoops. You see, no, I said previous. So you can see that there's places that embers could get trapped. There's also sometimes when you look at a roof of a house or look at the construction, there's little nooks and crannies. And it's really important to make sure those nooks and crannies. I mean, look at this is my house, so I'm not going to embarrass anyone else. I'm going to show the things at my house. trees and vegetation should be kept away from the house. Ours does not have an attic, so there isn't venting along here. They're telling you that closing in the eaves could be helpful. Kind of expensive. I think the jury's out on that one. But if you're building new, I would definitely go with that. Vents. So you probably have 1/4 inch. We recommend going down to 1/8 inch with any vents. This here, it's recommended that the siding not go all the way down to the ground. So if you got a little bit of something smoldering down here, it's going to have a ways to go to get into the wood. So this is a recommended thing to do with all of your buildings. During the summertime, this is a no-no. Your wood pile should be probably 25, 30 feet away from the house. And it's recommended that you put a tarp over to try to keep embers out of them. Wood pile gets going, it's quite a bit of heat and quite a bit of pretty nasty. This is a picture of my well and my water tank. This has been since the gardener came, and this is all cleared out now. But this is just to show that even if your house makes it, if your infrastructure gets all screwed up in a fire, your water system, your propane tank, and all of that, you could be delayed quite a bit getting back home. So it's part of the home hardening is to make sure your infrastructure is kept happy. Anyway, so how do you get somebody to come out to your house and do this for you? You can sign up for an inspection at the Bonny Doon Fire Safe Council website. And we schedule them at your convenience. There's a new thing now where we can either just do it informally, or we can do a formal one and enter it into the database. From what I understand, the database is they're trying to put together enough data on what homes look like. So if there is an event, they've got some forensic information to work with. Which homes made it, which didn't, and what did the homes look like before the fire. So it's sort of something that it's up to you whether you want to be in the official database or not. So anyway, we're hoping to get some more people online. We generally will do, every month or two, we'll do several of these depending on the waiting list. And Lisa Shallop's been doing the scheduling for those, which we really appreciate because it takes a little bit of logistics. So anyway, I'll be available for questions. And maybe I can get that website into the chat.
Okay, thanks, Susan. Hang around. I'm sure there will be questions for you and Lynn at the end. The next speaker is Glenn Heimovitz, and he'll be talking about the Bonny Doon Neighborhood Communications. He's the volunteer head of the Bonny Doon Neighborhood Communications Initiative. Professionally, he designs incident management systems for police, fire, and EMS across the country, and his systems are in use at police and fire departments, airports, hospitals, school districts, colleges, and other organizations. Glenn's hobbies are bike riding, ham radio, sailing, archery, kayaking, as well as hiking in our beautiful mountains. And let's see if I can get this spotlight switched over. Let's see. Okay, getting there. Okay, I see Glenn's presentation on the screen, and you're spotlighted, Glenn, so go ahead.
Very good. So Bonny Doon has a great system currently for a backup communication system. When we lose power in our neighborhoods, we often lose internet, we lose phone systems, we lose just about everything. The one thing we won't lose is the way to communicate between each other with either ham radios or with MERS radios in local communities. So I'm going to go through and show you some of those different options. So why do we use radios? There's a lot of situations where we would use a radio, either MERS radios or a ham radio. MERS are pretty convenient, but one of the main reasons is because we lose phone service. Phones will often last until the batteries run out at the end of the street. The same thing with the internet. Comcast might go down. If you happen to have Starlink or some other satellite system, then you can stay up a little longer. But in general, power outages just knock everything out. In natural disasters, we get trapped up on the mountain up here, and we won't have a lot of ways to communicate or get help if there's something really bad that happens. The picture on the screen here is showing a standard MERS radio. They just look like, normal walkie-talkie kind of radios. There are over 350 MERS radios in Bonny Doon. Lisa Schlop can attest to that because she's programmed a lot of them over at the Coffee Connection. And there's 34 plus ham operators in Bonny Doon as well, and over 300 in the county. The ham community practices regularly to make sure that we've got good coverage, that we can communicate with each other, that we've got our radios are working correctly. And we want to have the same type of thing with our MERS community as well, so that everyone's using these things on a regular basis so you can practice it. MERS radios cover between 1 and 2 miles, so you can't get real far with it, and I'll show you some examples of that with the MERS radios, but you can talk locally within your local community. Ham radios cover most of the county. So if you're a ham radio operator, you can communicate all across Bonny Doon and the rest of the county. The CERT users also use the MERS radios programmed to the same channels. So if there's a problem and the CERT is activated, they're going to use the same radio channels. They'll be able to listen in on some of the community things that are happening. Each neighborhood can use the MERS radios to connect just with your local neighbors. Ham operators monitor the MERS radios and then relay that message across the mountain or to emergency services. A lot of us have Starlink so that we're able to still have our phones even when the power has been out for a particularly long time. There's going to be at least a few people on the mountain that can still communicate. We want to be able to activate, communicate to those people, and then pass that message along. So the MERS people talk to each other within each community, and the ham radio operators pass that message along to the rest of the county or emergency services or wherever it needs to go. During a storm or a power outage, we might turn our radios on. We turn ours on pretty much in like the Pine Ridge area where I live. We turn our radios on whenever there's something really, big storm that's happening, power goes out. We almost always turn our radios on. There's almost always at least a dozen people, often many more. One week we had 39 people check in just in Pine Ridge. If there's any medical emergencies during a power outage or internet phone outage, the neighbors can assist each other until help arrives. A lot of neighborhoods like ours have current or former firefighters in them, or EMTs, or nurses or doctors that can help out, and the radios are the only way that we can get that message across to them. If there's a fire like the CZU fire, MERS users can talk within the neighborhood. Like when we had the fire up here, and I'm not going to recommend this to everyone, I did come up during the fire and actively put out the fire at my home and some neighborhood homes. The problem was that there was no way to communicate with the other people who were doing the same thing. So each person that came up put themselves at risk. If you have a way to communicate with each other like the fire department does, or the police department does, they all have radios because it allows them to communicate with each other, and the ham radio operators can then pass that information along. The MERS radios, the ones that you have now are not the same as the ones that they're currently selling. The MERS BTEC V2 is the newest MERS radio that's available. It's got a few more options, and it allows you to talk on the normal MERS channels, but it also allows you to listen in on CAL FIRE, sheriff, the weather information, emergency frequencies, as well as the ham channels. So you can actually listen in on the MERS radio channels and some of these other very important things, and you can scan them as well. The MERS V1, which is what most of you have if you have a MERS radio, only has 5 channels. There's some variations of that, but they're really only 5 channels. So you can only communicate with a small group of people, and there's often overlap between the communities. It's okay, but you don't want to be interfering with each other. In Pine Ridge, we have monthly check-ins. So on the first Sunday of every month at 5 p.m., we check in on channel 21. So we have a MERS coordinator. So every month we send out a message to the whole community. A few days before we have the check-in. And then we have a MERS coordinator who's then goes through each road in Pine Ridge and asks, if the neighbors are available to check in. And it gives them a chance to practice using their radios. So this practice on a monthly basis really helps people get comfortable, because a lot of people don't feel comfortable in using their radios on a regular basis. So you might want to know when you're holding the radio, you hold it in front of you, the antenna up. Don't hold it right up against your face. Hold it in front of you so you can talk with it. And it's also broadcasting radio signals, so you don't want that right next to your head anyway. So you hold it in front of you, you press the button and talk, and release the button so other people can hear it. Now, so other people can talk as well. If you keep your finger on the button, it's like you're broadcasting and talking all the time. You always have to remember to release the button. And this gives you a chance to practice using the radios until you're comfortable with them. And when something really serious arises, you to feel comfortable and just grab your radio and know what to do. If you don't have a MERS coordinator in your neighborhood, contact me and I'd be happy to provide training and whatever resources I can. We also have the bonnydoonradio.org website, which has all of this information in it on the MERS stuff. The ham radio side, I'd also be happy to help you with as well. This is what Pine Ridge looks like from the air. MERS can only talk within the area you're seeing on my screen. So it can't go very far. It's 1 mile to 2 miles, and it's subject to getting cut off by trees, rocks, other types of obstacles. So it's not a very big area that you can communicate on. But when you're working in a serious situation, this is often more than what you need in order to get help from your neighbors. This allows you to communicate with most of the neighbors, right nearby you. Like in Pine Ridge, there's around just under 90 homes or 90 parcels. This allows pretty much everyone in the community to be able to get help if they need it. And just about everyone in Pine Ridge has a radio currently. Each neighborhood within Bonny Doon, you can see the different color codes over here. Each neighborhood within Bonny Doon has their own MERS channel. So it's not one channel for everyone, a giant party line, but it is like a party line. Some of us remember party lines, where you can have a telephone where you have a lot of people talking on it or can talk on it. So in this case, the telephone is a radio. And each neighborhood within here is talking on a similar channel. So you can see in the Pine Ridge, we're talking in channel 2.1. It's the same channel that's used in Atherley. Now, normally we won't hear them. They won't hear us because they're too far away. But if we have a big, huge antenna, we might be able to hear all across the mountain, which is one of the advantages of having a ham radio as well. MERS can communicate with other MERS radios nearby, but they all have to be programmed the same exact way. Ham radios communicate across the entire county. So ham operators are regularly practicing using a repeater that we put up. Actually, it's over at Susan Mason's house in the Pine Ridge community here. It used to be at a couple of other homes around Bonny Doon, but right now where it is, it can communicate across all of Bonny Doon. So no matter where you are in Bonny Doon, the ham radios can communicate. MERS radios do not require a license. That's why we chose MERS as a standard neighborhood radio. It's like a walkie-talkie that you don't need to have a license for. Ham radios, on the other hand, require a license that can take 10 or more hours of study, and you have to take a test and pass at least 75% of the questions in the test. It's a bit more work to do, and once you get your license, then you can use ham radios pretty much anywhere. This is what the ham radio coverage looks like. Not just Pine Ridge in here, but you can see everything in green can be heard on the ham radio that's located in that dot right in the center, right in the Pine Ridge subdivision. So we have excellent coverage all across the county, out to the coast, pretty much up and down the coast, all through Santa Cruz, out to Watsonville. It even goes all the way out to Monterey. We've communicated with people over in the Monterey Bay and Big Sur. It's really awesome what you're able to do because we have a giant antenna on the top of Susan's house that allows us to communicate over a very, very long area. Normally, the advantage of ham radios is that they're small, they're like a little walkie-talkie. I keep a ham radio with me when I go hiking or biking or bike riding on Wilder Ranch. If I see a biker that gets injured, cell phones don't work there. Cell phones don't work anywhere in Bonny Doon. So, unless you happen to be right at the fire station and have an AT&T line. So what you're able to do with this is you're able to take it with you wherever you go. And if you find an injured person, I can use the ham radio to communicate with other ham operators who are often listening. I frequently have my ham radio on, and I know Susan's husband Dennis often has his on, Susan often does, and there's many other ham radio operators around the county that are just listening in case something happens. So there's a big community of people that want to be able to help us out if we need it. So you can get pretty much anywhere up and down Empire Grade. The only place I found that we didn't have reception is when you get down into Braymore, because that's over a big rock and going down the other side. There's not a lot of great coverage over there. And then down right at the coast, right in the canyon going down Bonny Doon Road, there's a blank spot over there too. But pretty much everywhere else in Bonny Doon, you've got excellent coverage. There are numerous medical emergencies every year on Wilder Ranch and right behind Pine Ridge in going down towards Laguna Creek. Bike riders crash all the time. They break bones, whatnot. 85% of CAL FIRE calls are medical emergencies. The ham radio actually has better coverage than the CAL FIRE system for their radio. So we really value the fact that we've got great coverage and that ham radios can work to solve problems and emergencies wherever they may happen. And they're not that big to carry around. Why are ham radios able to communicate better than MERS? Well, MERS radios have an antenna that's very short, 6 inches to 17 inches, roughly. That's it. And they can only communicate between one MERS radio and another. Ham radios basically use what's called a repeater. So the repeater allows you to take your radio, and the repeater has a huge antenna on it, and the antenna can listen for signals that are coming in, even if they're very weak. So the ham radio repeater can then hear those signals, then take that signal and repeat it at a much higher, broadcast volume, and then broadcast that across the county. MERS radios broadcast at 2 watts. Ham radios can broadcast at between 5 and 8 watts. And then when it hits the repeater, the signal is rebroadcast at 50 watts. So it really, you think of a 100-watt light bulb, 50 watts doesn't sound like that much, but when it's in a radio format, it actually goes all over the county, as you saw. Radio waves travel at the speed of light, so it's roughly 30 miles with your standard antenna. So if you're interested in learning more about MERS radios, you certainly are welcome to contact me, glenn.hamovitz@gmail.com, or you can visit bonnydoonradio.org. And there's a ton of information on MERS radios, and I'll be adding more information on ham radios to that website fairly shortly. And I really appreciate everyone's help in trying to reduce our load on the emergency services and increase our own reliance on our own capabilities during times when we don't have emergency services. So we have to be prepared. Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn. That's another fascinating talk. Okay, the final one of our 4 main presentations tonight is on the Santa Cruz Long-Term Recovery Group. Up until now, we've been talking about things that you can do to prepare in advance or during an emergency, but now we're going to move on to what happens afterwards. And let's see here. This presentation will be from Tanya Wald-Switzer, who spent 7 years in social service, nonprofit administration, and management at Community Bridges, managing large grants and projects, including the disaster case management program following the CZU fire and 2023 atmospheric rivers. In 2023, Tanya became executive director of the Long-Term Recovery Group of Santa Cruz County and is currently launching a variety of projects, including a volunteer rebuild program to bring uninsured and underinsured families home, and a Santa Cruz County voluntary organizations active in disaster group. And Tanya was a total loss survivor of the CZU Lightning Complex fire. So go ahead, Tanya. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and giving me this opportunity to speak. I just want to, before I start even, I just want to say how grateful I am for the neighborhood that I live in. So we bought our home in Pine Ridge in April of 2020, and then it subsequently burned down in August. And having 2 of my neighbors here that I can look out my window and see their houses, and it's a very active community with neighbors that support each other. So I just wanted to mention that before I start, that it really comes down to that is organizing our communities and supporting each other, and that's something that's come forth in so many ways after we were struck by disaster. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my slides. Let's see. Share, and let's go into view mode. Let's see. Okay, can you all see those slides?
Yep.
Great. Yeah, so the Long-Term Recovery Group, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. If you Google Long-Term Recovery Group, you'll see that there is very often a long-term recovery group where there has been a massive disaster. Not all of them are 501c3 nonprofit organization. They start out, they're a collaborative effort with the different stakeholders that sort of come to and stand up to support communities affected by disaster. Initially, there's FEMA, there's SBA, there's county, which we're still very much collaborating with in many different ways. And there's all the different nonprofit organizations that come to support. Initially, there's the food bank, and there's Community Action Board, Community Bridges. There's United Way, who does communications. There's faith communities. There's a multitude of communities that come forth and want to help. And then after a while, there's a little bit of an ebb and a flow to it. So we were in a flow. We were in sort of we had a choice to make. Are we going to let this sort of fizzle out a little bit, or are we going to continue working strongly and seeing how many homes we still had to build, how many families still were not rebuilding? We decided it was not time to step aside, and that's when we made it into a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so we could go after funding and hire staff. So currently we still have a disaster case management program. It is for the atmospheric rivers of 2023. There is still a federal DCMP, a disaster case management program in effect that is funded by FEMA. But the funding for the CCU fire case management from FEMA was exhausted, or the program ended in August of 2023. And so that program is currently funded by Community Foundation from the disaster funds. But that funding is also running out at the end of December. So we're currently in the process of moving the disaster case management program under the wings of the long-term recovery group, and we have achieved some funding, but are currently also looking for additional funding to make sure that we can be fully staffed and continue that work. There is an unmet needs funding roundtable where Community Foundation sits and together with Valley Churches United that supports unmet needs cases. Currently, parameters for unmet needs is that the projects that are funded needs to lead to, at a minimum, to a temporary occupancy permit or a temporary certificate of occupancy, ideally a final certificate of occupancy. It's capped at 50,000 if we come into a project that's already underway. If we're building from the ground up, it's higher than that. It's generally capped at 200,000, but we can go up to 250 under extenuating circumstances. This is all funding that was donated in the wake of the CCU fire and also the atmospheric river. So there's still some funding available, but it's a finite amount. And so we're always looking at our clients. We're trying to diversify our client pool. So we have some people that are completely underinsured and some people that are uninsured that are coming in with some funding. And then, we work with, I'll get into a little bit more about the VOAD that you talked about, Dave, but we, that's where we come in as sort of a coordinator for responses and future disaster. And, but we do a lot of coordination of available resources for recovery. So just sort of a, reminder of the massive CCU fire that we're all very familiar with. 80,000 acres of forested mountains burned, 60,000 residents evacuated, 911 homes lost across around 680 properties, if anybody has the exact number, but it's a number that gets a little confused because some properties had more than one home, and so people think 911 families, but it's less properties overall. So that's often the number that we think about as the 680 something properties, because we would only support building one home per property. And I just put in a quote here. We heard this a lot. People not being sure whether or not they're going to build. And we are trying to help move that needle towards yes, when that is the right thing for the clients. It's not always the right thing. Sometimes it's right for them to sell their property. And so we're really looking to support families in achieving what we call a realistic recovery plan, and that can look different for everyone. For some people it's right to sell, some people want to build, and some people haven't made up their mind yet, even if it's 4 years later. So our objectives currently for the 2024-25 year is building two bedroom, 1 bath homes. One is in White House Canyon and one is in Boulder Creek. We are engaging with, and you see MDS there, it stands for Mennonite Disaster Services. It is nationwide, as an organization that is both in the United States and in Canada. They have roughly 7,000 volunteers across the United States and Canada. They all they do is disaster rebuilds. And they bring in volunteers, and so there's volunteers that pay their own way to come out and come and build people's homes, and that's what they do. So we have one build in White House Canyon that we're going to pour foundation on hopefully this winter, and one in Boulder Creek. The one in Boulder Creek we'll probably build ourselves, meaning with our local volunteers. We are, this may, as I get into this, may sound very much like Habitat for Humanity, who has not been doing disaster rebuilds in our county, but we are launching a collaboration with Habitat for Humanity. They have a gap in their projects. They will break ground on their new South County project sometime in the summer. They're hoping of 2025, and so they have a gap, and they will come and work with us, and so we'll do an official launch of that collaboration sometime in January. But we already have some Habitat volunteers in the field, and we will have more from them coming in December as well. And so we're already actively collaborating with Habitat volunteers. For 2025 and 26 and 26 and 27, we are working on lining up 5 to 7 clients, 5 to 7 properties, where a 2-bedroom, 1 bath, or a 3-bedroom, 2 bath would be appropriate. And that's really depends on the family size. It depends on the footprint of the original structure, what they can build, their septic size. So there's multiple factors that go into it. Sometimes also topography can limit the type of build that we can do, and so we're actively doing outreach to clients now to line properties up for building for the next 2 years. And the Mennonites they really like to have 7 homes lined up, but if we have between 5 and 7, they'll come and build with us. So who do we work with? So we work with the we really work with clients that have often multiple vulnerabilities. The income eligibility is 80% of area median income, which is classified as low income. It is not the federal poverty level. So a lot of people are surprised that they qualify for it. Even though because they're saying I make over $100,000, but it's not. I think it's 103,000 for one. Maybe that's not right. I should put that in my slides, but it's for a family of 2 or 3, it's 100 and I want to say 108, 109, something like that. So it's not the bare minimum, but a lot of people, some people wouldn't qualify, but a lot of people do. We also work with seniors. We work with people that have disabilities. We work with, people with minor children in the household, single parents. We obviously look at whether or not they're continuously displaced from their disaster. So that means primary homes only. If they have another home that they can live in, then we wouldn't build for them. If they are displaced to a trailer on their property, yes, absolutely, we would build for them. We see that as continuously displaced. Many of the people that we work with have several of these vulnerabilities, mental health concerns, emotional distress. All of those things come with trauma, fire trauma. And so, the majority of the families that we get in touch with will fall under some of these eligibility criteria. And if they then also hit the income eligibility criteria, we can work with them. So this is a little dated. I think we're at 122 completed family dwellings at this point. We have received, and I just want to give a shout out to Cummings' office and Matt Machado as well for supporting me in my communication with CDI to get access to client information. So we have now just received over the last few weeks 52 contact information for 52 households that have received the 3 pre-clearances permits, but have not yet submitted plans for permits. And so those are what we consider low-hanging fruits in our potential client base. Those are people that have, are ready to build but haven't done so, and presumably many of them because of financial constraints. When we think about building a home, 50 to 75% of the cost is contracted labor. And so we can really bring that down a lot. We're looking at the homes that we're looking at right now are 988 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1-bath homes. And we are able to build them for around $200,000, sometimes depending on the foundation. So if the foundation comes in very expensive, it can go over that. But that's roughly what we can build for, which is a great square footage price compared to what you would get if you went out to contracted labor. So this is just showing you the house. This is a 2-bedroom home with that. This is the Mennonite Disaster Services plans for the 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 988 square foot. And this is the 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,092 square feet home. So they're modest. There's no frills about this. But the clients that we work with are very often in a situation where they're unable to add any luxury items. It's really just a question of getting a roof over their heads and getting their home. I'm going to skip this. This is just floor plan of the same home. This is a home that we're actually actively working on in Boulder Creek right now. We have volunteers on this home 3 days a week. It's a home that stalled out. It was already under construction and stalled out for lack of funding. The client came to us and said, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I have a funding gap of $200,000 to get this done. And we sat down with our construction project manager and myself, and we went over the budget line for line and sort of realized where we can put in volunteer labor, and we were able to get that down to an unmet needs gap of $50,000 that we were granted. And so we are 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, this home passed rough inspection, and they're currently putting siding on the rest of the home, and the roof is on now, and the drywall has just started going in. So it's going well. This home is going to be home, this client is going to be home sooner than we expected. And this is I just wanted to show a slide about the atmospheric rivers. Of course, it's a very different type of disaster. With the fire we had, it was very visible where the homes were lost and where they were not. With a flooding like this, the water recedes, and it's sometimes impossible to see from the outside. You cannot see the damage until you actually go inside the homes. We did not have a clear sort of CAL FIRE map that showed us the damages. And so it's more of a lengthy process that case managers are involved in, of reaching out to everyone that were in touch with FEMA initially, to find out who is still struggling to recover, so that we can also go get into those homes and help them. But there are cases that are coming out quite frequently with still excessive mold damage, coming up on we're a year and a half later, right? So, and also the response is very different when there's a flooding. With fire, you have to wait until everything has been cleared, which in our case, we were cleared debris removal in March the following year. And so it took a long time before we could even get on our property to do anything. Whereas with flooding and this type of damage, you need to get in right away to do mold mitigation. So it's just a very different way of thinking about disasters, and we learned a lot. So now we feel like we know what to do in a fire, in fire recovery, and also now in storm and flood recovery. We're still learning about that. Briefly, I wanted to talk about California, the VOAD, Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster. I don't know, Susan and Glenn, if you are familiar with this, but it's a nationwide organization that has state programs. So there's a VOAD in every state, and we're currently working on standing up our county VOAD. So there's also county VOADs all over California and in other states in the United States as well. It's all based on the 4 C's: cooperation, communication, coordination, collaboration. It is a CBO, so community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, businesses often involved, and it's a way for streamlining communication about response. And so when there is a disaster, we want to make sure that we don't step over each other. We want to make sure that everybody knows what everybody else is doing, and that there is a clear communication from the Office of Emergency Management to the organizations that are actually responding. So that's something that we're working on standing up. We're hoping to launch sometime early in next year. But the long-term recovery group, so my position, 20% of my position, is also supporting the coordination of the VOAD in Santa Cruz County. And so that is part of the work of the long-term recovery group. Last slide, I'll share these slides as well, so you can send them out. We have a website. We had the links on here are for a contact us form. There is also for anything that you may have questions about. And then there's a disaster case management intake form for anyone that may need to get in contact with the disaster case manager. I get a notification in my inbox whenever somebody fills out any of these forms. And so if you know somebody who could benefit from our services, please don't hesitate to share this information with them. I think the hardest part for us is reaching the people that need our help, even 4 years after. The people that know how to get on Facebook and know how to get the information gets the information. It's the most vulnerable of our neighbors that really we're struggling to reach. And I'm still getting calls almost weekly from people that have not heard about us, that just suddenly heard about us through the grapevine and neighbor. So we're really leaning on all of you to help spread the word. We do have a volunteer rebuild program interest form that asks quite a lot of questions about what home did you lose? What is your financial situation? Do you have insurance? All of those things. That helps us do an initial vetting. And then for anyone who wants to come out and swing a hammer or help with any of these projects, we have volunteer opportunities. There's a volunteer application linked. If you're interested, please fill it out. And then there's a little bit of an onboarding process, a very simple onboarding process, I should say. And then we can get you out in the field to help get some families home. And that's what I had, and happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Tanya. I think at this point now we are going to move to the Q&A. And Eric, Eric, I believe you've been compiling the questions in
I
chat.
have. I
Okay,
have. So we'll go through the questions we received in chat. And then if there are additional questions, people can speak up. First question, regarding Firewise. Is there a process for extending a Firewise neighborhood? We live a quarter mile from an existing one. Can we add on or do we have to form a new one?
So that, I'll answer that one. So the answer is yes, you can extend the boundaries of an existing Firewise recognized communities, but you need to have adjacent parcels. So being a quarter mile away is a problem unless you can get all the parcels in between you and the existing Firewise community to also join that community. You also need the Firewise leader of that community to want to take you on because it's more work on their part. In order to extend a Firewise community boundary, it needs to be done on the renewal cycle for the existing Firewise community. So the renewal cycle actually ends next week for November 22nd for this year. So the next opportunity to expand the borders of your Firewise communities would be next November of 2025. And it's up to the Firewise leader to do all the extra paperwork that's required in order to do that extension. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Next question, this was directed to Susan. What do you think of external sprinkler systems for the roof, etc.?
Well, I don't think it could hurt. You do have to realize that fairly early into the fire front coming through Pine Ridge, we lost power. And people who had sprinklers on their roof, all of a sudden, the sprinkler quit and the house caught on fire down the street from us. So you do need to have backup, think about backup power. And what if you're not home? There are some that can actually be turned on remotely. That would be something to go over with somebody in a home inspection to actually look at the situation. Liz Ann Jensen has put misters under the eaves on her house, and that can be a real helpful. That might even be more helpful than roof sprinklers. And wetting the whole area down if you have enough warning, I found to be very helpful. I think that really helped with our few houses here we were able to save because we had watered the heck out of them before anything even got here. So yeah, I don't think it can hurt, but maybe talk to a few people that have them and see what they've done.
Another question regarding roofs. Is a Class A metal roof any more fire resistant than a Class A composition roof?
You know, I'm not really sure, perhaps, but I don't think a roof is going to a good roof is going to catch if it doesn't have a bunch of debris on it. Your most the thing that you really get the most bang for your buck is keeping it clean.
Okay.
I have a cat calling me. I don't know where she is.
Okay. Another person asked for advice on interior window coverings that are not Venetian blinds.
Yeah, I saw that. I think natural materials are less flammable, but you might want to have them to where they can be quickly removed as well. Because radiant heat can cause a problem. If you've got triple pane windows, you're probably okay. But I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it for myself because we just haven't bothered with any window coverings. But
Okay. Thank you.
Can I speak on that?
Sure.
I'm the guy that asked the question. My wife is very sensitive about bedroom privacy, and the home we bought, we inherited fabric pull-up blinds, And when the first time I saw them, I said fire hazard. So we'd like to replace them. The windows are double pane, I think. We got a lot of space between us, so we've done a lot outside, but this is belt and suspenders time.
Yeah, I think if you have a lot of space outside with vegetation well away from the window, I'm not sure that it matters that much. I would use natural fabrics though, rather than something like something more flammable. I think linen and cotton are less flammable.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. For Glenn, we'll start with Glenn. Have you heard of any neighborhood sharing Starlink internet?
Not sharing Starlink internet, but certainly like I let any neighborhood wants to use my internet, I give them my password, but there's no way that it goes very far. So it can only be like my house and right near my house that someone might be using it. But certainly during every power outage that we've had, I invite neighbors to come over to my house and use my Starlink as much as they want. So it's a personal thing, not an organized community-wide effort. Would be more, individuals.
Right. Another question regarding MERS radios. Do people leave their radios on all the time, or only if there's a potential or a real emergency?
So that's a lot about personal preference. Some people just like leaving the radios on all the time and, just to listen in and be aware. Most people don't do that. Most people only turn the radios on during an event or a power outage or, a major storm, fire danger. We try to encourage people to turn it on during those times, but, it's like a party line. Anyone is talking about anything. So most people don't want to hear each other chit-chatting, but during an emergency, we certainly want to know when someone needs help.
Okay, continuing on the radios here. The ham radios sound like a much stronger, better radio, robust radio. Why aren't more people getting those? What kind of investment, time, and I'm assuming expense is there associated with those?
Well, the radios are actually about equivalent in price between the MERS radios and like a handheld ham radio, which is all you really need currently in Bonny Doon. But there's no requirements at all for education on the MERS radios other than pressing the button and talking. But on the ham radio, you have to get a license, and the license can take 10 to 20 hours of training to learn how to do that online, or it could be a much longer course, many weekends of course material to learn in order to get your license. It's just a prerequisite. It's something that is an obstacle to trying to get people into the ham radio community. It serves a huge purpose in Bonny Doon because of the utility of it, but getting people to go through that training and getting a license is a bit of an obstacle.
Thank you. And pardon me, two more questions regarding radios. You have a recommendation for both the MERS radio and the ham radio?
Sure. We've used as a standard the BTEC MERS V2. That's the current radio that's available. If you have a V1, it will certainly provide you the MERS channels, but the V2, which is the new version of the same radio, expands that so you can listen into the CAL FIRE radio channels, the local ham frequency that we're going to be talking on, and lot of other options, 200 channels overall. It's just a much better tool than the old one. And the best ham radio that I recommend for just beginning users is the Bofang BF F8 HP Pro. That's a new radio that just came out about a month ago. Also a very useful tool. And again, you can use that pretty much anywhere in Bonny Doon. Just walk outside, grab the radio, and you'll be able to communicate with every other ham in the county.
And one last question regarding radios. Do you think the new iPhone text via satellite communication will be sufficient replacement for ham radio during emergencies?
No, because not everyone has an iPhone. I don't have an iPhone. And it's only as good as the your signal and how well it's going to work to satellite. As I understand it, pretty good, but you'd have to have the right tools in order to do that. And it doesn't solve the bigger problem of so you are able to send a text message over satellite to someone. Does that mean that a fire engine is able to get up the road when it's blocked with debris? No, you have to rely on your neighbors. And that's why we have that MERS radio network internally and the ham radio to communicate across each other so that we can help each other in times of emergencies when the outside services can't get through. And that happens regularly enough that we have to be concerned about.
Thanks, Glenn.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those are all the questions that came through. If there's nothing else, I'll turn it back over to you, Dave.
Okay. If there are no more questions, then thanks to all of our speakers. I found this really interesting, and we had pretty good attendance. So see you back in our next public meeting will be in January. We'll send out an announcement about that as soon as the plans are finalized. And stay tuned, but before then, we expect to have our new RBDA website up and running with Highlanders available, videos available. We'll post the video of this meeting, a link to it on our RBDA website. And thanks to the speakers, and thanks for everybody who joined in by Zoom.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.